This podcast contains subject matter that may be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
For imprints one.
It's time to open the door in your mind. Sit back and listen to true horror. But be careful what you allow in. Because it's time to go through the fog. This week's story is The Door, posted by user rsteady to r/scary stories. I lived in a haunted house. It was terrifying, and it was all because of a damn door. I found the door in an old farmhouse of modest construction, box-like with 2 stories and garbled roof, and overgrown with adlers and buckbrush. Inside, the walls and ceiling were cracked and peeling. The floors were warped and broken, with large sections collapsed into the darkness below. Then, I saw the door. It glowed and pulsed in the setting sun. I felt warm, comfortable, dizzy, almost giddy. It was like a dream. I woke the next morning with the door in my garage with no recollection of how it got there. It didn't matter. I loved that damn door. I sanded the door, painted it white, replaced the hardware, and used it to replace my bedroom door. It gave my bedroom a feeling of peace and tranquility. It didn't last. It started with a rattling of the doorknob. At first, it was very subtle, and always seemed to occur as I was falling asleep. I would wake thinking I heard something, and then sit quietly in the dark, listening. It was unnerving. Then, the slamming began. I'd be in a deep sleep when the door would slam and shock me awake. This happened repeatedly throughout the night for almost a week. I could barely keep my eyes open at work, and my coworkers expressed concern for my ragged appearance. I couldn't tell them anything. It would sound too insane. I tried everything to stop the door from slamming. Stops, locks, and furniture, nothing worked. I tried to remove the door on several occasions, but I would stop myself, thinking I was being foolish. After a week of sleep deprivation, I decided to use my phone to see if I could capture what was making the door slam while I slept. What I saw made every hair on my body stand on end. At around 1 a.m., the door clicked open and began to swing wildly and change directions just before slamming shut or hitting the wall. This continued for about 15 minutes, then suddenly stopped. The door softly clicking closed. All was still. Gradually, over the course of several minutes, a dark mass materialized on the surface of the door. It was a dark and violent mass, with shapes clawing and scratching. The door swung open, but the dark mass remained in the doorway. Slowly twisted figures crawled out of the abyss and into the room, hugging the walls like shadows. They crawled in and around my bed, and slowly I got up and walked towards the swirling abyss in my doorway. The abyss seethed and churned as I approached. Just before my foot crossed the threshold, I became rigid, slammed the door, fell back into my bed, and then sat straight up in bed, reacting to the door slamming. I removed the damn door and burned it back to hell.
Through the Fog was recorded by Haptic. Edited by Brad LeBaron, Haptic, and Kevyn Kerrivan. And produced by Flyover State Park. All stories are recorded either with the author's permission or with a Creative Commons share-alike license. If you like what we're doing, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find links to Haptic and Flyover at State Park's link trees down in the show notes. There you can find links to our podcast on other platforms, as well as Twitter and other social media and YouTube links. Redistribution or sale of this podcast is strictly prohibited without the express written consent of both Haptic and the story authors. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
This is Flyover State Park. You are clear to land.